I'm James Pearce, and this is the LFC Couch.
Demanded that he should score for Liverpool. Salah to settle in. In front of the top. Vicious cross. Mane! Alexander-Arnold. It's floating!
From doubter to believer.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the post-match pod by the LFC Couch. My name is Steve and I'll be your host this evening. And today I'm joined by three guests. I think the same three as last time we all got together. So we've got Lee, James and Jussi. So one by one. Lee, how you doing?
I'm very good, Steve. Very good. Happy.
Good. James, how are you?
Yeah, going very well, thank you, Steve. Top of the pops after recent victories.
Yeah, it's been good. And Jussi, how are you doing?
I'm great. Really happy about yesterday.
Yeah,
for many obvious reasons. Yeah.
Good. So we'll get to talk about that. So it's a sort of bumper-packed episode. So obviously the four of us are going to talk about the victory over Chelsea, which is going to be good. We've also got an interview that Nish has done with Jeff Goulding, which, if any of you don't know, he's an author and he's got some really good books out based on Liverpool. So we'll play that about halfway through. And then we've got some prizes to give away. So most of the listeners will know that we've already given away 7 of the new Vapor kits from the kit launch that the guys down in Sydney arranged, which was a great event, courtesy of Ultra Football and LFC New South Wales. So the shirts have all been given away and claimed. There's still 3 $50 vouchers for Ultra Football that we're going to give away. So I'm going to give away all 3 of them in this episode, but they're all going to be at different parts. So you're going to have to keep listening to hear your name. So these vouchers, I'll do the first one now. We're doing a random draw. If I call out your name, you've got 24 hours to contact the LFC Couch to claim your prize. So you can do that on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So just make sure you get in contact, because if the 24 hours passes, then you're not going to get your prize. So the vouchers are all sponsored by Claymore Wines. So make sure you head over to Claymore Wines at claymorewines.com.au to check out what they've got on offer. And they do worldwide delivery, if any of you are wondering. So I did the draw earlier, and I have got a video to confirm if anyone's doubting it. The winner number 1 is Yannick Legrand. So Yannick, if you're listening, get in contact with the LFC Couch and we'll sort out your prize. Okay, so let's crack on with the actual game itself. So first of all was the lineup. I'm assuming you guys are going to have the same sort of feelings as I did. The lineup was as expected, apart from the surprise of having Fabinho in the back. So we obviously know there were issues there with Joe Gomez and Joel Matip, but none of you saw that coming, did you?
Not really, no.
Not in the slightest.
No, I didn't. I wouldn't have predicted it, but it was interesting. I was having a conversation with somebody else on Twitter in the week about whether they think we're going to sign a defender, and I said probably not, because I think that we're going to use Fabinho there when needed. I didn't think it was going to come that quickly, but we'll go on about him later. But yeah, the team lineup was as expected. Chelsea had a few players missing through injuries and just sort of non-fitness, but it was as expected other than that Fabinho bit. So first half wasn't that eventful until the last few minutes of the first half, which is an obvious moment which we'll go on about later. But I was impressed with how we set up with the tempo and technically. Now, Jussi, you've put a couple of messages on the group earlier today, so I just want to hand the mic over to you and give us your thoughts on how we set up in the first half and the sort of formations we were playing and everything.
Well, I have to say the way we moved as a unit was so much better than the game against Leeds. So I have to say I was a bit surprised that we could improve so much in one week. And the way we were interchanging positions there, you could see Salah dropping back and coming to get the ball, sometimes help out with defense, and our eights, Gini and Keita bombing on, moving into the box and beyond Firmino and all kinds of that kind of stuff, attacking and also defending. We were really compact, moving as a unit, not that sort of hasty pressing that we had against Leeds. When we would move, we'd move as a unit. I was really, really impressed with that.
Yeah, have to agree. I mean, it was quite evident early on that we'd upped our tempo from the Leeds game, the Arsenal game in the Community Shield, and we were putting that press, and there was quite a few occasions where Chelsea were trying to pass it out at the back, and Kurt Zuma and Christensen were put under some serious pressure. So it was sort of flashbacks to how we used to play. So it was good to see that back. And even though we didn't create a great deal in that first half, I was happy with how things were going. So, Lee, James, anything else you wanted to add on that? How did you guys think we sort of set up in the first half?
Look, I thought it was, very sort of 50-50 really, like it was 6-1, half a dozen the other. This was really the first litmus test for both us and Chelsea. They weren't great against Brighton, got the win. We weren't great against Leeds, got the win. So this was the first test for both of us to see where we are, even if we are still very early in the season. But I think this was a bit of a showing for both Klopp and Lampard to see where these teams are. Obviously, the first half didn't show an awful lot, but the second half did.
Yeah, it was fairly even. I mean, I've jotted down a few of the main chances here. Sort of around 10-ish minutes, there was the moment where Salah went through and Kepa came flying out, and Salah managed to beat into the ball and put it back across the goal for Firmino to have a chance, which was blocked. Timo Werner had a couple of chances. One he drilled wide of the far post, and then there was the one where I think they'd have been flagged for offside anyway, but he absolutely scuffed his shot. And then there's obviously the moment right at the end of the first half. But we had a lot of good moments with the ball without creating that sort of final moment and that killer pass at the end. So, I mean, James, what was your sort of opinion on the sort of first half performance?
Yeah, I think going back to what you two were saying around control and how we were sort of transitioning both defensively and offensively, I think compared to our performance against Leeds, there was a marked improvement. And before the start of the season, if you had asked me who one of my biggest concerns was this season, it probably would have been Chelsea, based on who they've brought in, how well they performed last season, despite all the transfer bans, everything like that. And they brought a lot of young players through who have performed pretty well. So prior to the game, my expectation was that it'd be quite a real big clash. Really be interesting to see how Liverpool compare and step up to the plate. But my honest opinion was we were in control for most of the game. Chelsea sat back quite a lot. They played out from deep, and it didn't really work for them too well, in my opinion. There were times where they got forward, but when they were getting forward, Liverpool were keeping up with it, and that was not a concern for us whatsoever. I think our only issue was going forward. It was half chances, and there wasn't really too many clear-cut opportunities, and there was nothing really being created from the midfield going forward. A lot of it was coming from the extra work, from the pressing of Mo Salah, Sadio Mane, Bobby Firmino. So I think going in 0-0 at half-time, forgetting about the incident that happened right on half-time, I think that was probably quite fair. But I felt defensively we were completely astute, and Chelsea didn't have a chance. I didn't expect Timo Werner to play. I think that came as a bit of a shock to quite a lot of people. There was talk about him taking a knock against Brighton last week.
Yeah,
and I felt
a leg or something, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So to see him in the starting lineup, and then with Kai Havertz there as well, and we're still waiting to see it in the Premier League, but he's only just arrived. We know how good both Kai Havertz and Timo Werner can be. So I think the way we handled them and the way we handled Chelsea's attack, or their counter-attack, I should say, I thought was absolutely fantastic. I think my only other observation was I felt, maybe it was more for the second half, but definitely in the first half, I felt Chelsea really only had one sort of plan of attack as well. It was the same thing over and over, and I feel when you play a team like Liverpool, and especially when a team like Liverpool is in the groove that they were yesterday, you can't do the same thing over and over and over again because it's not going to work and it's going to get found out. And I felt we cottoned onto it quite quickly, and that's what kept Chelsea to a minimum.
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned right at the beginning there, that you'd highlighted one of the tough games being this Chelsea game. But if you think about it in terms of how many players they've gone out and bought, it was probably the best time to play them this season. before their new players are all bedded in. Yes, they've signed some superstars, but they're not familiar with each other yet. They've gone out and bought 4, 5, 6 new players, and you can't just throw them together and hope that it works straight away. It will click in some games, and then they'll get found out against us. That squad has been together for years, apart from a couple of additions. So we all know what we're doing. We've got a system we adopt. We've got a system we play, and we know our roles. Whereas Chelsea, I'm not saying they're not going to do well, but at the moment they're a team of individuals, and it's going to take a while for them all to get used to each other and gel. So as soon as the fixtures came out, I said to myself, I'm actually glad we've got them early, because I don't want to be going to Stamford Bridge later on in the season when they've got their teams gelled a bit more, potentially have some fans in the stadium as well. So it was a good one to get out of the way early, and it was a good marker. So
yeah, I honestly think Timo in a 5, 10, 15 games later, he's scoring both of those. I watched a lot of the Bundesliga last year, and both Kai and Timo were just ruthless players. I mean, I know we're going to get on to late in the first half and second half, but I think taking Kai Havertz off at half-time was a big mistake. He looked dangerous. He was creating a lot. And they're only going to get better. So, yeah, you're right. We played them at a good time. And, look, if the result had been better, they probably played us at a good time too. So, all good though. Play on. Carry on.
That's it. So, yeah, obviously, apart from that, there wasn't, as I said earlier, there wasn't a huge amount of big events in that first half. It was good football played and a good system that we set up, but we didn't create too many chances, and neither did Chelsea. They had a couple of half chances. But the main talking point, obviously, in the first half was the rugby tackle by Christensen on Sadio Mane, which how he only gave a yellow card at the beginning, I don't know. But I don't know what you guys think, but I was so pleased, and I'm pleased that they're doing it this season, that the referees are actually going to check the monitor. They're not just leaving it to the guys in the studio. He went across and had a look. He can say, well, actually, I've made a mistake there, because they showed a replay, and his position, he's so far behind play because Henderson pings it from so deep. So it's no offence to the ref there from where he is, but he can't possibly see it clearly. So it was good. He gave the free kick, gave what he thought was a yellow card, and then obviously we went through the VAR check, and then he checked the monitor. And I just hope they do that more this season, because it's something Lee, you and I brought up many times last season on the pods. We moaned about VAR virtually every pod, and it was like, well, why don't they use the monitors like they did in the World Cup? They're there. So this season, good to see. But did any of you think it wasn't a red card? Because Frank Lampard's had a go and said it wasn't clear cut. So
No, he didn't. Come on.
he did. He said it could have been given as a red card, or it couldn't. He said it wasn't 100% clear.
I don't know. Did he have anything to say why he thought so?
I haven't seen the full transcript of it, but I think it was more that whether it was, he's not denying the foul. I think where he's denying is Mane going to get the ball before Kepa does, because that's where it's yellow red. That's the difference. But
Kepa confused that for the referee and for us watching. Like, obviously upon replay, it was clear Mane would have got there easily before Kepa, but obviously where the referee was standing, he was directly behind, so he didn't see the ball or how far or near Kepa and Mane were to each other. So, quite safe and thought I'd have a look anyway, just in case, which is what he did. So, I can see where Frank Lampard was talking, but he must have seen a replay and got in his own head if he didn't say it out loud.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much they've seen the replays, because Klopp in his press conference said he hasn't really watched replays and has just seen it as it was, and he thought it was a red, but if he wasn't sort of 100% on it because it happened so quickly. So, but no, I mean, right decision was made in the end of the day, and you sort of go in at half-time then 0-0, and you're thinking they're down to 10 men, and it's that. At first I was sitting there thinking, are Chelsea just going to put everything behind the ball and say, just break us down and then we're going to struggle? But obviously we know what came. But it was, before we go on to the second half, I mean, I think just based on that first half alone, and he performed consistently throughout the whole game, but I think the performance of Fabinho in the first half especially was immense. He was the standout player in that first half. just the way he marshalled Timo Werner. There was one chance where Werner looked like he'd got away, and then Fabinho just sort of tracked him back and sort of plugged him out of the way. So I think he deserves a special mention, playing out of his favoured position, and then put in a first half brilliant performance, and obviously carried that on into the second. So were you guys all sort of satisfied with a 0-0 at half time, bearing in mind they were just gone down to 10 men? You'd have taken that, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Of course.
Yeah, definitely.
I felt like there was always an accident waiting to happen at their back. Like Kepa and Christensen both do seem like that sort of players that always feel like you can get at them. And you could see that those players both made a mistake in this situation where they got the red, because Kepa is so far off his line. He didn't really need to go there. Maybe that made Christensen's mind up that he needed to do something, because that was always going to be a goal unless he fouls Mane. But obviously the foul, the way he did it was just ridiculous, because he was always getting a red card from there.
Yeah, it was one of the moments though where Christensen had to make that challenge though in the end. Once Mane had got in front of him and Kepa had got to where he was, he had to do something, and he took the risk, and it sort of didn't pay off at the end of the day. But one thing you just mentioned there about sort of Kepa and his issues and stuff, one thing I was a little bit disappointed with, which is a sort of angst of Pete quite often from the couch, is lack of long range shooting. I think with the confidence that Kepa has and the amount of goals he concedes from long range shots, I was just a little bit disappointed that we didn't have a few more pop shots. But look, we found a way of beating him eventually. But just I thought first half we might try a few more. We just didn't really try much, to be honest. But first half was done. I mean, I was happy with the performance. Would have liked to have got a goal, but 10 men, 0-0, we were good. So before we move on to the second half, I mentioned it at the beginning of the pod, I just wanted to introduce an interview that Nish has done recently with Jeff Goulding. And as I said earlier, Jeff Goulding's an author. He's written many books based around Liverpool. So if you haven't read any of his books, make sure you give this pod a listen and then hunt down some of them books to give them a read, because they are some good stuff. So over to you, Nish.
Thanks a lot, Steve. As mentioned, I'm joined by Jeff Goulding, an author from Liverpool, born and bred, 40 plus years as a Liverpool fan. And this all came about by a wonderful lady called Amanda Joy Ellum, the ex-chairman of the LFC New South Wales group, saying, at our kit launch event at Ultra Football, I know a guy and you need to speak to him. His name's Jeff. He's an author from Liverpool. He's amazing. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And reached out to you that same day. And Jeff, we have you on the pod. How you doing?
I'm delighted to be here, and obviously very grateful to Amanda as well, who was also very good to give me a few comments and stories for the new book. So thanks to Amanda.
That's really good. No, I mean, it just shows the technology these days. You're able to talk to people all over the world, and hey, look, yourself, you're an author, and we'll get into all the books and how that came about. And you're able to talk to people on the other side of the world like you're doing right now and jump on a podcast. And let's hopefully make you a hell of a lot of sales from all the hard work that you've put in. So
thank you very much.
No, it's super exciting. Do you mind if I get into your background first? Because I mean, I've been researching you. I've been doing as much digging as I can to find any dirt. Didn't find any, but did find that you're a Liverpool born and bred, Liverpool fan your entire life. Do you want to just talk us through that?
Yeah, sure. So absolutely. I mean, I'm glad I buried the dirt really deeply then that you couldn't find it. Not been a Liverpool fan all of my life, really. Consciously aware of being a Liverpool fan around 1974 when they won the FA Cup final against Newcastle, and kind of memories of watching that game with my family are kind of deeply ingrained. I kind of went to my first game in 1975, which was a 2-2 draw against West Ham at Anfield. It was an evening game under the floodlights, and I just remember being a young kid in the paddock in the main stand for that game with my dad and my uncle and my cousin, and just being transfixed by the Kop. And spending most of my time being prodded by my dad, who was reminding me that there was actually a game taking place. And kind of that's kind of the start of the journey. And then I was hooked really from that moment on, and what an incredible journey it's been. 45 years going the match, and seeing Liverpool win absolutely everything, that it's possible for a club side to win. So I feel incredibly blessed to be a Liverpool supporter. Also lived in Liverpool all my life, love this city, love this place and the people and its ethos. And sort of worked here all my life as well. So I'm quite late to publishing books. I didn't start publishing books till about 3 years ago. Writing for various websites before that. But worked in the National Health Service in Liverpool for nearly 30 years as well. So sort of born, bred, worked in Liverpool my whole life, and developed a really massive passion for the Reds, and that's kind of led me into writing, which is something I've always wanted to do, but really took it seriously in the last 3-5 years.
That's fantastic. And hats off to you for working for the NHS for that long as well. I mean, my brother works for the NHS in London, but it's you guys down there who helped me out my last visit in 2018. I had to go to hospital in Royal Liverpool for overnight. Things weren't going so great health-wise. Yeah, but I had to lose 20 kilograms since then, so it's all gone well now.
You're looking very well now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Had to do things, but it's the NHS who saved me. So once again, thank you everybody out there and every NHS worker putting their lives on the line for that. But you sound like the perfect Liverpool person, right? Someone who dedicates their life to helping others, someone who's followed the Reds your entire life since 1975, your first game. That was the year my dad moved to Liverpool as well. So it's kind of the same kind of thing in my heart that year that, we started winning the European Championship 2 or 3 years on the bounce as well. And such special memories that you get. I'm an 82 baby, so I didn't get to experience those sort of years, but all I can do is hear from people like yourself. Do you have a special memory from that era? I love talking to people and hearing special things that happened in that specific era.
Yeah, for me, so kind of there's all sorts of memories really. I remember Keegan leaving and the desolation when Kevin Keegan left, and me and my mates having arguments in the street about will Liverpool ever be the same again without Kevin Keegan, and then we signed Kenny Dalglish. So that's kind of a really vivid memory of mine. Those conversations between kids in the playground and in the streets as you're kicking a ball around. But of course, we were European champions when Keegan had left. So I remember the victory parades. They're really vivid in my memory. And I remember 77, we'd had the Silver Jubilee, and Liverpool now probably wouldn't have street parties for a Jubilee or for a royal wedding or anything like that. But back in the 70s, it wasn't such a problem. And I remember the bunting being still out on the street, windows full of posters of Liverpool FC, and I remember walking down towards Queen's Drive with my mum and my dad and my sister and my aunt and uncle and cousins, and all going to Queen's Drive to see the bus coming home with the European Cup. I remember doing it again the next year. I remember after 78, I remember just thinking that this is normal. This happens every year. I kind of come to expect it, And then I remember going to Anfield to see Nottingham, a 0-0 draw with Nottingham Forest, who'd beaten us 2-0 in the first leg, and seeing us going out of the European Cup and listening to the Nottingham Forest fans goading us and saying, "You're not champions anymore," and going home in tears, crying, So it's kind of memories of that period are of, feeling like Liverpool were invincible, seeing Liverpool winning everything. Seeing such unbelievable players playing their trade at Anfield, the 7-0 against Tottenham Hotspur. Again, I was in the main stand for that game. Remember they'd signed Osvaldo Ardiles and Ricky Villa before that game. They'd just been promoted from the second division, Spurs. I remember being quite nervous about the game and thinking it might be a difficult game, and then Liverpool go and blow them away 7-0. I remember the cops singing "What a waste of money" because they'd spent all this money on these two Argentinian superstars, which "What a waste of money" is a bit of a cliche song now, but it wasn't back then kind of thing. And that goal by Terry McDermott, the cross from Steve Highway and the fantastic header into the net at the Anfield Road end. And you just, you kind of welded to the club then. You've had all these experiences, and then when you experience the defeats, you experience the lows, but that just makes the highs even higher, So what the 70s and the 80s were just an absolutely glorious period for me. It was kind of childhood and then coming of age was the 80s. So I couldn't have asked for more, really.
Yeah, yeah. I tell my friends the same thing in regards to, even though I was really young, we won the last title when I was 8 years old, but it was still pretty vivid in my head. Like every year, it just seemed to be we're either winning an FA Cup or we're winning the league or something like that. And then suddenly it all changes. I mean, I remember turning on the TV with Hillsborough happening and going, what the heck? I mean, my whole family, both my brothers are Liverpool born. So obviously they were quite there. My dad have a huge passion. He is a doctor as well. So seeing all that happen, and then the Souness era after that, and how it all changed, and the club losing what felt like its identity, with Ian Rush leaving and John Barnes and everything like that happening along the way. What was it like in your eyes? You're a Liverpool born and bred and living there the entire time. We'd already skipped country by that point. But yourself, what was the feeling around the city during the 90s then?
So it's strange, isn't it? Because it's like the proverbial frog. You stick a frog in a pan of water and bring the temperature up. It doesn't notice it's what's happening around it, and doesn't notice it's being boiled. It was kind of like that, I think. So when we won the title in 1990, I kind of just thought we'd do it again next year. And then when we didn't do it the next year, I thought, well, it'll be the year after that. And kind of, it takes a little while for you to start to realise that actually this is now becoming an era. It's becoming a period in the club's history where you start off thinking, well, maybe we just need to get a couple of new signings in. Maybe we just need to strengthen the defence. Souness goes, you think, well, Evans starts to put together this young side playing very flamboyant football. Robbie Fowler's bursting on the scene. Steve McManaman, you think, oh, well, maybe we're going back to the old boot room tradition. Maybe we'll get it back. But then slowly but surely, the years turn into a decade. And so for me, it was kind of, it was very much a famine after a feast, really. And you look at it, you look at the last 30 years since we won the title, since we'd last won the title. That 10-year period was the grimmest of all, wasn't it, really? Because we only won the FA Cup and the League Cup in all of that time. But it just seemed to fly by. And it just felt like, we'll get it back, And then it was only towards the end of the 90s that it started to feel like it was going to be a problem and might be a long wait. I think the 30-year wait became a real issue as we went past 20 years. And we were starting to watch not only United supersede us, but then the likes of Arsenal and Chelsea and then Man City. And then the money comes into the game. And you start to feel like, actually, this is a problem, because how are we going to overcome this? Liverpool are not built to win the Premier League. There's other teams with far more resources than we have. And then I start to worry that, I've got a son now who's, my eldest is, my son is 25. And you start to worry that, he'll never see us win the league. And that becomes a real fear. And then Jurgen Klopp comes along and, all of that changes, really. I really did instill that belief that it wasn't far away. That even when we went, we got the 97 points but didn't win the league, I didn't feel really despondent. I felt like, well, we've shown we can do it. And so I was absolutely confident we'd go again. And history, the rest is history, as they say.
So was that really the tipping point then? Because I think every Red felt it, right? We've been, especially the ones who have done the 30-year wait, or at that point, the 25-year wait. To have Klopp come in, it does make you reevaluate your life a little bit to go, wow, we may actually have a real shot here. This guy is something different. And you decided to start chronicling, or was the first book the semi-fiction book, the Stanley Park? Or
no, Stanley Park was the second book. The first book was Red Odyssey, which coincided with the 125th anniversary of Liverpool Football Club. And so I decided to write the history of the club from 1892 to 2017, as it was then, by writing 125 individual stories from the history of the club. And that was kind of the first time I realised that I had it in me to write something of that size, really. And so then I've always wanted to write fiction. Fiction's always been a passion of mine. So after writing Red Odyssey, I just, had this idea lurking in the back of my mind about writing a history of the Merseyside derby, but doing it as a kind of historical fiction, a story of two families in Liverpool, experiencing the return of the Merseyside derby in 1962. Because Liverpool had been in the second division and Everton had spent some time there as well. So there'd been a big gap between a Merseyside derby, and that was the return in 62. So I thought, well, what if there were these two guys who knew each other in 62, one a red, one a blue? And what if I chronicled their lives up to 2017 supporting the Blues? And it gave me an opportunity to explore the evolution of the rivalry, really, because the rivalry was very friendly. The 80s was some of the greatest times being a football fan on Merseyside, because Everton were also a great side. But then the rivalry soured, in recent years. So it gave me an opportunity to tell a story and kind of almost have the two families as a metaphor for the rivalry between the two clubs. So that was the second book. But Red Odyssey, which was just intended to chronicle the first 125 years of the club and probably never go any further. But then Jurgen Klopp comes along and he creates another two books for me. So I've got a lot to be grateful to Jurgen for, really.
Yeah, I was going to say, I had to actually scroll down and see how many pages. So you compressed 120 years of Liverpool history into 320 pages. So, that's, I don't know how many years per page that is, but that's quite the feat. I don't think any sane, normal human being will go, I'm just going to chronicle 100 plus years of a football club's very rich history. So credit to you. I see you've done a lot of work with LFC history as well, because I love going into the website. Is his name Christopher? Is it that runs lfchistory.net? Is that right?
So it's Arnie Balderson runs LFC History Net. I know Arnie. What a fantastic resource that website is, and to be honest, it's been a huge bonus in writing the three Red Odyssey books, because the sheer amount of statistics and detail and data that Arnie and the guys there have collected over many years, is really helpful to historians. But then there are other sites like playupliverpool.com, and then there's the Liverpool FC Historical Group who do a tremendous job bringing to life, long lost heroes of the club. So those resources have been incredibly useful. What I decided to do with Red Odyssey was not chronicle every year, but to pick out the key moments, the key stories in the history of the club, and cover each of the decades in that way. So there's 125 individual stories, and there was a real challenge because there were many that I wanted to put in that I couldn't put in, and maybe there'll be another book later that'll cover all of those as well. But I think I've covered the key moments in the club's history over that period anyway.
Yeah, let's hope that Red Odyssey series carries on for maybe 15, 20 plus books. That would be nice. It means you've got a lot of good memories to look back on. So Red Odyssey 1 is basically everything up to 2017. Red Odyssey 2 is about the Champions League win, Madrid. I'm assuming it covers a bit of Kiev as well from the year before. References it.
So it was actually a little bit of an opportunity to go back to the start of the Klopp era and tell some of the stories that it didn't include in Red Odyssey 1. So there's absolutely no duplication in the two books. But we go back to 2015 and the arrival of Klopp, and then we explore the journey to Madrid, and we cover the loss in Basel of the Europa League, and we cover Kiev as well. And then it concludes with that magnificent homecoming on the waterfront. And the thing about the books is what I've tried to do in each of them is to include first-person perspective. So it's got first-person perspective from me. So, you've got a kind of cop-eye view of the games that I've been to and the games that I've covered. But also I've more, with the latter two books, I've managed to sort of, as you say, with the wonder of the internet, I've managed to communicate with fans all over the world and include their stories too. So in the latest book, Champions Under Lockdown, which covers the Premier League title, We've got comments and experiences from Austin, Texas, Australia, India, Germany, Ireland, Scandinavia, obviously Liverpool and England and Scotland as well. But we've got, the real sort of rich tapestry of experience of supporting Liverpool Football Club all over the world, and what that title meant to people both young and old in all those different countries. And I think, might sound a little bit egotistical, but hope one day I would like to think that someone who was researching the club would have that rich resource now. Because what's difficult when you're researching the history of the club is finding information about supporters, finding information about what supporters were thinking and feeling 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. But with this book, what I've done, I think, is created a real rich social history of the club, which hopefully people will really enjoy.
That was actually the first thing I thought about when I saw it. I was going, this is going to be an amazing thing to just leave on your shelf. And my son's only 9 months old. I want to tell him about the first year of his life and how we won the title and how mad 2020 was. 2020 is a fiction book that came true. So
yes, it is
absolutely crazy. So it's something that I'm definitely going to purchase, because I think it's going to be very special for my family growing up. And my young Red, he better be a Red. I've nicknamed him Divock anyways. So I'm going to make sure he is. But then you have the last one come out, and I looked into the topic, the main character / real person of the book, the Lost Shankly Boy. And I looked into George Scott and I went, wow, that is quite the story. So I'm more interested, A, how did you find out about this person? And B, how amazing was it to write this book?
Well, I mean, it was an incredible experience to work with George on the book. Very emotional experience for George and also myself, really. Got to know George and his family quite well during the process. But kind of, it took me about 5 minutes of meeting George for the first time, which the meeting was ostensibly for me to have a chat with him with a view to maybe writing an article that I'd publish online. But within 5 minutes of talking to him, I knew this was a book. I knew that this was there was way more information than an article could possibly do justice to. How it came about was George had actually bought Stanley Park Story. And he contacted me after reading Stanley Park Story and said it'd be great if we could meet up. I was around for quite a bit of that stuff that you wrote about the 60s. So we met in the Shankly Hotel on Victoria Street in Liverpool for a pint. And it was on the day that Liverpool were playing Aston Villa. It was that amazing game where Mane scores with the dipping header from the corner in the very last minute and we win 3-2. And sort of we're sat in the Shankly Hotel and the game's on in the background. And George starts telling me about his story. And basically, George's story is a forgotten story. That's where the title of the book comes from. He was one of Bill Shankly's first ever signings. He was signed as a young apprentice. Shankly and Ruben Bennett brought him down from Aberdeen for a week-long trial. And then essentially begged him to sign for the club. He didn't want to sign for the club. He wanted to sign for Aberdeen. He'd been offered a contract with Aberdeen. He was 15 years of age, but was so blown away by Bill Shankly and the aura of Bill Shankly that within 5 minutes he was signing for Liverpool Football Club, much to the shock of his family up in Aberdeen. So he kind of witnessed, and the book goes into those early formative years of the Shankly era. He witnessed the kind of the birth of modern Liverpool Football Club. He was there for all of it. He was at the FA Cup final. He walked on the pitch before the game behind Bob Paisley and Bill Shankly, heard the things that they were saying. He was in the dressing room. He was the kit lad. He was sent outside Wembley in '65 by Ruben Bennett because Ruben Bennett had a spare ticket, and he said, "Go and find a Liverpool fan to give the ticket to." And then he couldn't get back into Wembley. And he had to get Shankly to come out from the dressing room to tell the police to let him back in. But then it kind of talks about the disappointment, because back then there were no substitutes allowed in football. George was the highest scoring reserve year in, year out. Shankly clearly thought an awful lot of him, but he just couldn't break into that fantastic Liverpool team, and eventually he goes back to Aberdeen and plays in Aberdeen. But then his life takes this incredible turn. He goes to South Africa and he becomes a champion in South Africa, top scorer in South African football. And then his later life, he kind of has this almost Forrest Gump type life where he's rubbing shoulders with American diplomats and Hollywood film stars. And, you know, you just sit there and you listen to George, who's a fantastic storyteller, and you think, we have to put this into a book. We have to preserve this for posterity. And George has got this deep sense that he wants to record all of this while he still can. And so it's been an absolute honour and privilege that I've been able to do it for him.
Just in my, if you can hear me, yeah, just in my personal research as well, the thing that struck me the most was you see a different side of Bill Shankly. When you're seeing from the outside, you're thinking gruff, tough guy who's trying to build an empire, literally build an empire. So he's got all these hundreds of people that he's looking after, and maybe thousands of reserves that he sees over the years. But this one guy that maybe could be thousands more, but this person, he's there going, giving recommendations down to South Africa, and then going, giving recommendations to Tranmere. It's giving on the phone call saying he's my best reserve, he'll score you 30 a season. And within minutes, he's there playing a testimonial match and winning a place at Tranmere. I mean, it's just the most incredible story you've ever heard. So, well,
it is, and also, you know, you read what a lot of ex-players said about Bill Shankly and what a lot of his boot room team said about him, and they do tell this story of this no-nonsense guy, this tough guy, who, you know, Roy Evans famously said Shankly, you know, didn't give you advice; he gave you instructions. You know, it wasn't asking you to do something or suggesting; he was telling you. He famously, you know, had no time for players who were injured. He called the treatment room the Bastards Club because, you know, he wouldn't speak to players if they were injured. And yeah, he shows this deeply, you know, affectionate side with George, and you know, and I think some of that is down to the circumstances of George coming down from Aberdeen. He lost his grandfather, and then he lost his mother shortly afterwards. And I think Shankly felt a deep sense of responsibility towards him, really took him under his wing. But above all that, I think he thought he was a good player and a very hard-working player. And I think he was genuinely sorry he couldn't give him a start. George is very pragmatic about it now. He says, you know, there was Roger Hunt in front of me, Ian Callahan in front of me. You know, there was all these superstars in front of me. You know, Peter Thompson, who was George's great mate. You know, he wasn't getting into that side. And there's a great story, which I don't want to give too much away, but there's a great story about how Shankly let him go and the conversation they had in Shankly's office. And it, you know, brought a tear to my eye, you know, listening to it. And I think it does give another dimension on Shankly. Be quite an interesting insight for people to read that side of the man.
100%. It's definitely one I'm going to buy. Mostly, I want to hear those stories. There's a lot of really great stories out there. I read another one, Stephen Gerrard, Michael Owen and Me by Mike Yates, I believe it is. One of my favorite books about Liverpool, just hearing a person go through the academy, not quite make it, and then find their way back into a career. That's the stuff I love. I'm sure you're going to absolutely love this book, everyone who's listening. So it is called The Lost Shankly Boy by Jeff Goulding. And in case there's many spellings of Jeff, I thought spelling Nish was hard, but Jeff. It's that type of Jeff, just in case you're wondering. And Goulding is Goulding. So look up The Lost Shankly Boy by Jeff Goulding, George Scott's story. As well as Champions Under Lockdown, should I say. That will be fantastic. And then I'm sure most people might work backwards, other people might work forwards, but whatever it is, I'm sure all of them are going to be great reads. You got such amazing reviews online, by the way, Jeff, so it just shows the level of quality that you're writing at, despite being at it for only 3-4 years now. So just kudos to you on that.
Yeah, very pleased. Yeah, very pleased with the feedback that I've had so far for the books. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Awesome, mate. So, Jeff, thank you so much for being on the couch. I really appreciate you having here. And just keep those books going. As soon as you're thinking of a new one, maybe you want to write a story about Liverpool fans in the strip. No, don't do that. We're not that interesting.
Au contraire.
Exactly. So, just good luck with the rest of the books. I'm sure there's going to be huge amounts of stories to come, huge amounts of books to come. And I just wish you all the very best. So, thank you so much for being on the couch today.
Thank you. It's been a privilege. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you so much. All right, back to Steve and Lee to continue with the post-Chelsea pod. Catch you later.
Thanks for that, Nish. As I said earlier, make sure you get some of them books and give them a read because they are very interesting. I need to have a sort of read of a few more myself, but make sure you do as well, and it's a good listen. So before we go on about the second half, it's time to announce winner number 2 of the $50 voucher for Ultra Sports. So number 2 is Joel Gibb. So Joel, same as before, get in contact with the couch. You've got 24 hours from the time this pod goes out. Get in contact with us and we'll sort out that $50 voucher for you. Okay, lads. So second half. There's going to be one main topic for this second half, but we're gonna hold off initially. We'll acknowledge the fact that Thiago came on at half time, but we'll give Thiago the time he deserves in a second. But you could see instantly second half, Chelsea down to 10 men, little bit of a reshape with Hendo going off, which I think he had a slight knock. From what I've heard today, it's nothing too serious. Hendo wanted to carry on, but Klopp said, no, you're coming off. We're not going to take a risk. So we got the man we've been waiting for months. Lee, you first brought the situation into the LFC Couch WhatsApp chat back in June about when we were being linked with Thiago and how it would be amazing to get him. And 3 months later, we finally got our man and got to see him on the pitch straight away. So stuff it. Let's go straight in with Thiago. We'll come to the goals. Thiago just got involved straight away. I want to hear your thoughts on him straight away. Let's just have a bit of a Thiago love fest. James, hit me with it. Thiago, what a man.
What a man. What a man indeed. What amazes me was he signed as of the match a day and a half prior, or he signed 2 days before and had a day and a half training with the boys. And when he came on, it was like he'd been training with them for years on end. And I mentioned it to you guys before, but I guess we're quite used to new players coming in, and quite often we're used to seeing players slowly introduced into the system. You know, it's obviously a very high intensity way that we play. We train with a high intensity as well. So there's obviously a lot of time given to players to get used to that. Obviously, Thiago's a world-class football player who's obviously just but who's recently won the Champions League with Bayern Munich. He's always played in these star-studded sides. He's a man full of this outstanding calibre, and deservedly so. As soon as he came onto the pitch, it was evident to me that there was a level of quality in our midfield that we've not had in recent years. I've seen some comparisons to Xabi Alonso when he was with us, and I can completely see where that's coming from, because what our midfield offers at the moment through Henderson, Wijnaldum, Keita, Fabinho when he's obviously playing there as well, Milner, a few others that are there as well. We've got some fantastic options in there. There's no denying it. But there's always an element that feels like it's lacking. There's always something that's missing. You remember when Van Dijk came into the squad, and straight away you noticed there was a jump in quality difference. You look at the front three, and when the three of them are playing together, there's a quality difference compared to when we might play. And obviously, no offence taken. No offence is meant to be caused, but Divock, Origi, those kind of players. There's an element of difference that comes with playing these players. As soon as Thiago came on, and I respect that we're playing against 10 men. I respect that it's a very different environment and everything that's going on in the world with coronavirus. There's no fans creating this atmosphere, whatever. It was evidently obvious to me that he was bringing something else that we had been missing for such a long time. The way he was moving, the way he was passing the ball, the way that he was finding space for players to create opportunities, it just was phenomenal. And I've seen comments where people have said, he's an midfielder, he's just playing an average game, he hasn't done anything special, he just did a couple of tactical fouls and a couple of passes here and there and everything like that. But if you've been watching Liverpool play consistently for the past 4 or 5 years whilst Klopp has been in charge, you can see that difference that he brings. And even though it was only 45 minutes, you think about the rest of this season, what we've got to go for. We've got Champions League, we've got the domestic cups, we've got the Premier League that we're trying to maintain and keep. He is going to be the difference between winning these, or getting very close to winning these competitions this season and falling behind. He is that quality player who will bring that difference.
Yep, 100%. I mean, before I move on to Lee and Jussi, James, you tweeted something yesterday, and I've just got to read it out. And it just sums up how good he was when he came on. So your tweet, James, yesterday was, Thiago plays football like he invented the fucking thing.
I'm being genuine. The way he played, it was just like he was orchestrating everything. Like he just had this this musical piece, and he was writing the notes and he was playing the music. It was
really strange to watch. Because I was so focused on him when he came on, it was just every time someone had the ball, he was there. He wanted it every time. He'd get the ball, one touch, ping it, and then he'd want it back again. And you could see the teammates as well were looking at him as if to say, right, let's just keep giving him the ball. And he just sort of caresses it around. I mean, he sees, even in that 45-minute snippet that we had, he saw passes and pulled them off that I couldn't see them. And I'm like, what's he doing here? And then he sort of has this weird technique where he sort of chops round the ball and just whips it in. And it's like, the guy's just immense. But again, Lee and Jussi, I'll come on to you. We are going to go on about everything else, but we're just having a good sort of chat about Thiago. So the stat for the whole second half on him is he made more passes in 45 minutes than any Chelsea player, with a total of 75. And his 75 successful passes was the most by a player since stats came in 2003, 2004 in a 45-minute period. So, and if you do that on your debut with players you're not 100% familiar with, it just sort of shows that he's different gravy. You mentioned the Van Dijk thing, bringing him in. He came in straight away. You could see that level. Thiago is 100% similar ilk as him. And you mentioned it earlier there, James, the similarities to Alonso. I don't know if you guys remember, but the first season we signed Alonso back in 2004, 2005, it was his home debut against Norwich. And it was one of them games where everything was about Alonso. Afterwards, people were talking about it for days, a couple of weeks afterwards, saying, oh, do you remember Alonso in that game? Because we'd witnessed something that we hadn't had for so long in our midfield. It was like, back then it was Xabi Alonso's the new Jan Molby, the way he just gets the ball and sprays it about. Now you've mentioned it, Thiago is the new Xabi Alonso in our team because he can just sit there in the middle. But he offers more than Alonso for me. He's got the passing ability, but he'll also just drop his shoulder and beat a man. His turn of pace is rapid when he wants to, and he can just change direction. So we have got one hell of a player in our hands, and it was just going to be an exciting ride to see what he can do. So, Jussi, what were your thoughts on Thiago?
Yeah, you already mentioned his passing and the way he can get past players. But also what I noticed that the way he moves when we're defending is also something very, very intelligent. And it seems like, I can't remember the quote who said it, but somebody said he thinks like a coach on the pitch. And that's possibly the best description of his that I've heard. And it seems like every step he takes is towards some certain thing that he's thinking, he's anticipating things around him that seem impossible to think. And afterwards you see, oh, that's what was the reason that he was moving there or there.
Yeah.
And those passes also, sometimes he should, like you mentioned before, like he's not supposed to see that because there's no gap, but he can see the gap opening up before it does. And it's just incredible. It's just, you can't, if you feel like it's just magic or something.
Yeah, and the thing is, with that sort of player, because he sort of sees everything one or two steps ahead of everyone else.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and there was a bit of thing about whether we would sign him based on his age, because he's 29 years old. But a player with that capability in his mind to be able to see things before anyone else, even when his legs start to, I mean, his legs he should have years left in him still, but even when he gets to the point where he loses a bit of pace, he's got it mentally that he could sit there and become more stationary in the middle. And he can still see those passes and spray it about. So I don't think he's going to be just a 2 or 3 year thing. I think he could sit in that midfield for years and just spray it about. But Lee, anything you'd like to add about our average new signing? Oh, Lee has frozen.
Have I?
Oh, you're back.
Can you hear me all right though?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah, no, I can hear you now.
Anyway, as I said, like I watched a lot of Bundesliga last year, and admittedly Bayern Munich dominated, but he was very much the underrated hero, particularly when you got players like Lewandowski, Gnabry, Fonzo Davies, Kimmich. They get all the headlines, but every single player appreciates what Thiago's doing. He is what I can imagine Andrea Pirlo would have been for Juventus, and likewise Xabi Alonso. Just controls everything, calms everything down, controls the players, controls the pitch. You know, he's been with us for a couple of days, and he's like a captain without the armband. He's just calming everyone down, telling Robbo where to go, telling Trent to hold back. You know, he's just doing everything that a captain would do without the armband. He's just a fantastic player, and for me, he starts every game now. I can't see a reason why he's not.
Yeah, that will come down to when Klopp's managing the amount of games we've got. Once the Champions League's back in and all the domestic cups, then you're going to see him rotated. But you've got to think, all the big games, he's got to play. He will take us to another level completely. One thing I wanted to add on him as well, which I liked, is not just the way he played, but it's his determination, his passion. So there was a little glimpse of it. James, you mentioned it in the group when Mane went down.
Oh, yeah.
And he was on the sidelines.
Right.
You could see him jumping around in the stands. He was getting involved, sort of quite passionate. But the main one I liked was it was deep into the second half, and he sort of followed and chased Kante everywhere. And he put in a challenge, and the ball went. He managed to force Kante out of play. And all it went for a throw, and he walked off, give it a fist bump, and was celebrating, and just to push Kante out. So you can see how much those little things mean to him. He's not just there to spray it about and play these Hollywood passes. He'll get involved. He can do the defensive role brilliantly, and it's just, I think you've just got an all-round player there. And I just, maybe we're getting a bit excited because it was just this one game and he come in and did that, but are we really? Surely he's just going to be this immense player.
There was also a high foul with Millie at that moment. Did you see that?
Yeah. So it was good to see. So it was a little aspect of his game that I hadn't really seen when I've watched him play for Bayern Munich before. So it was nice to see that he's getting involved and he gets it. So I'm excited to see what he brings week in, week out. It's going to be some special stuff, and I think Pete's going to get a bit carried away throughout the season with his love for him.
I think we all are.
Yeah, I know. So we can't forget about Thiago, but we'll go back to, obviously, it only took 5 minutes into the second half, and we obviously broke the deadlock. So from what I can describe as an absolutely brilliant team goal. James, your thoughts on the goal? Talk us through it.
Yeah, I think that was Chelsea really starting to understand that the game was almost getting away from them from the way that they had set up. As I said earlier, in the first half, they were only really playing one way of football, which was play it out from the back, and that was it. Even going into the second half, even in the second half, when you're down to 10 men, they were still playing the same football. I think when you're playing against a team like Liverpool, you need to mix it up a little bit when you're down to 10 men. They didn't, so that just invited more pressure, which just kept Liverpool in the Chelsea half, and that afforded us the time to be able to move the ball around. And the way it was going, it was absolutely fantastic. Bobby Firmino linking up with Mohamed Salah, I believe, on the edge of the box, and then Firmino playing the ball through to Mane. Seeing the front three link up like that reminds us of some days gone by when Mo Salah was scoring 40 goals this season. Obviously, it's a one-hit wonder, so we don't see those kind of numbers anymore. So, but it just shows that when Liverpool, when the boys really turn it up, the stuff they produce is just absolutely phenomenal. And I think Jamie Carragher said it, and I saw a tweet by Cesc Fabregas as well. But Sadio Mane is I don't know if you guys have seen it. I'm sure you have. I'm sure every Liverpool fan's seen it. There's a video from the Red Men TV.
Red Men TV.
Yes, of the lad talking about Sadio Mane being the greatest player in the world, and not that it's a far-fetched suggestion, but it just they start sort of laughing about it, and he's just, I'm being serious. What are you laughing at me for?
Yeah, this was years ago as well, wasn't it? When
years
we first
ago.
Yeah, it
signed
would
him?
have been his first year, wouldn't it?
And this kid is
Yeah,
like,
he was.
no
he was
ifs,
just a kid.
no ifs, buts, or maybes. He's the best best player in the world.
That's it. And the reality is, he is one of the best players in the world.
Absolutely.
With his feet, with his head, his control is just outstanding. That header, I would break my neck trying to score that. It is unbelievable.
He scored a lot of headers as well, eh?
Exactly. He's not the tallest
He
boy in
gets
the
so
world.
high up.
Yeah, he does. But
Like the height of Steve.
he is such a fantastic individual
He's
football
shorter.
player. Then the other thing about Sadio Mane is he was one of the first players that Jurgen Klopp brought in, and when he got brought in, the amount of questions that came out, Sadio Mane, £30 million, that's a risk. £30 million, Southampton should be fuming.
Absolute steal.
That is
he
an
was
absolute steal. He
a revolution.
Bobby Firmino and Mohamed Salah as well, of course, outstanding world-class football players. But Sadio Mane, at this moment in time, without a doubt, one of the best players in the world.
Yeah, phenomenal player.
Yeah.
Jussi, can you add anything, or Lee, to the goal? I think James has pretty much summed that up perfectly.
There were quite a few passes
One
before
thing, James-
before the trio got the ball. Yeah, but go ahead if you want to say something. Yeah.
No,
Anyway.
you go, Jussi. All right.
Yeah, there were Thiago, Trent, Gini, many players involved before the front three got the ball in the first place. It was a really beautiful team goal, just like Steve said. Go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, as I said, one thing James forgot to mention was that England's greatest right back, Reece James, completely lost Sadio Mane. Lost him miles ahead. Like, I think I was watching the Mega Mini match, as us Aussies know, on Optus Sport. Even Michael Owen, I know we all disagree on what he was like for Liverpool, but he said as soon as you see a defender's number on his back, you've got him. He's gone. And which is what Mane did. Like, Reece James was watching the ball. Mane comes from behind, hops in front, goal, easy. Strikers finish all day.
Yeah, no, it was brilliant. Reece James, I was a little bit disappointed in him because I think he's a good player. He's no Trent. He's a different type of right back. But I thought he should have. I thought he'd offer more, to be honest. But you're right. Mane got the better of him there. But he'll get better and everything. Obviously, the whole Chelsea team's going to evolve as the team players will get used to each other, and that will happen. Just glad we sort of got our win when we did. But obviously, 3 or 4 minutes later, and we saw the Kepa Arrizabalaga horror show, which just pretty much happens every week now. So, I mean, my thoughts on that goal, we've just been talking about Sadio Mane there. Yes, it was a horror show by Kepa, but take nothing away from Sadio Mane in that goal, because he plays the ball into Firmino and it's a terrible pass, and probably Firmino should have carried on running, but he just stopped. And then from the minute he realised he's lost that ball, Mane just runs at him like a man possessed. It's not, I'm going to jog and close you down. He is sprinting. And again, the defence have lost him. And then obviously what happens is Kepa has his brain fart. And I mean, the rest is history. Look, Kepa is an absolute nightmare of a goalkeeper, and it can't do anything for the defence, the midfield, for confidence, having him behind you. We've been there for years when we've gone through the likes of Mignolet, Karius, even David James when he was there, and Brad Friedel for a brief stint when he was there. We've had those goalkeepers that are just...
Vesterveld.
Sander Vestervelde would be brilliant 1 minute, and then he's just doing crap. Pepe Reina would be brilliant when he first came in, and he was throwing.
Oh, look,
throwing
even
the ball.
Ali's cocked up.
Yeah, he's had his moments, but consistently, Ali's obviously much better there now. But we've had those moments, and Chelsea fans must be hating it. I mean, look at the Premier League now, or even world football. You've got the world's most expensive goalkeeper, who is absolutely shit, and makes mistakes week in, week out. You've got the world's most expensive defender, who is about as mobile as a fridge, and all he's got is his big slab head.
I'm not going to talk about United, but I'll be talking about that midweek, don't you worry.
Yeah, I'll leave that for your pod midweek. But it just amazes me. These two players, you've got most expensive goalkeeper and defenders, and in my opinion, both are just rubbish. But just briefly, have any of you seen the keeper who Chelsea are apparently signing? This Mendy guy.
No, not yet.
No.
I tell you what,
No idea.
I don't often recommend it, but get yourself on YouTube and just watch Mendy's howlers. He's pretty much on a level with Kepa from what I've seen, and he loves to come flying out of his goal and miss the ball and just take people out and get red carded. So he'll be an interesting one. I can't see why they're throwing money at him because it doesn't look like an upgrade on Kepa, unless I'm missing something.
I suppose he fits in perfectly then.
Well, exactly. Yeah, there won't be a bedding in period. It'll be the same. But
yeah, but you could. Well, it was something that James touched upon before about the way they insisted playing out from the back, and it seems like, especially down to 10 men, it seemed like really idiotic thing to do. But I wonder how much it has to do with coaching, or is it something that the players themselves decide? But Kepa is the worst possible guy to have doing that with you.
Yeah,
he's so prone to mistakes.
It's got to be drummed in by the coach. That's got to be coming from Frank Lampard.
Yeah, 100%.
It was a similar thing at the beginning of last season with Arsenal when they had Unai Emery. At the beginning of the season, they were trying to play it out from the back, even from goal kicks. And you got David Luiz and players like that trying to play it out the back, and it's just accidents waiting to happen. And when you come up against us, we're sort of one of the best teams at pressing you. Just get rid. I don't see why I get they wanted to retain possession, but they were just asking for trouble. And there was warning signs in the first half. Mane chased down Kepa, and it just got away from him. So the warning sign was there, and they obviously didn't take heed of it. Well, go on, Lee.
I think with that second goal, like, see how Mane plays a bit of a shitty ball, but he does a little jump of frustration. And if he didn't do that, and as soon as he passed it, just legged it towards Kepa. Kepa's clearing that because he has less time to play with it. Because Mane's given him an extra second or two to think about it. He thought Jorginho's there, I'll lay it off to him. Nah, Mane's on you like a bloody right up a drain pipe. He's rapid. People underestimate his pace, but he
must be an absolute pain in the arse to play against.
On the keeper situation though, with Chelsea, I don't understand why they continue to keep spending lots and lots of money. Like, there's plenty of good keepers out there. Like, Fulham just got Alfonso Areola off PSG. He's a quality.
That was
keeper.
A good deal.
Absolutely quality. And if it wasn't for Thibaut Courtois or Keylor Navas at PSG, he'd be at either of those teams. Obviously, he was on loan at Real Madrid last season, but Fulham can afford him. Chelsea can afford him.
Even Aston Villa, they picked up Martinez from Arsenal, and in my opinion, he's a better keeper than Kepa.
You're right.
Yeah.
Chelsea, they're just dickheads. Anyway, go on.
We like to watch them be dickheads, though, so that's all good. But
true.
I mean, once we went 2-0 up, it sort of became a procession. Apart from their penalty, so what's everyone's opinions on the penalty? Because at first I thought, he's brushed him, but then there was a link shared earlier by Nick, I think it was. And Thiago cuts across him from the back, and how much contact he makes, I don't know. It's very inconclusive. But Timo Werner actually kicks his own leg and then goes down. But at the time, I thought, I can see why it's given. But did any of you think it wasn't a penalty at the time?
It was hard to say because those kind of situations are always difficult to know why he clipped his own feet, because that sometimes happens because of a small nudge on the player, but it's kind of difficult to say.
Yeah,
I think. Go on, James.
I think when I first saw it, my initial thought was it's not a penalty because the way Thiago had come through, he sort of before he even got to me, sort of put his hands back and did that thing. It was like, no, they've got past me. I'm out. That's it. Unfortunately, football's played at a very fast pace, and it doesn't take much for you to lose your balance when you're trying to run through on goal. And hats off to Timo Werner. if he's carrying a dead leg, the way he had played out of 3 or 4 Liverpool defenders at that point to try and cut in to then take a shot on goal, I thought, yeah, he's going at quite a fair pace. So if he's got a touch, to me, I'm still not 100% sure if it is a penalty or not. I think the referee's seen it, and probably most times fair enough, it's a penalty. But I just think it's just one of those unfortunate situations. There's been a brush, and I think the pace has just got him, and he's gone down, and penalty given.
Yeah, I mean, you can see why it's given. It's very inconclusive for me of whether there's contact or where the contact is. But look, we didn't live to regret it, which is a good thing.
I think we saw a lot of Fernando Torres just so fast, and the slightest touch, slightest even breath,
down.
and you're going down. You just so off balance so quick. You've got nothing else to do but go down. So fair play to Timo. I think he won it more than we gave it to him.
Yeah, I think while we're on Timo Werner, I expected us to win this game, but I just had a feeling that he was going to have an impact in it. I thought because of the whole flirting with us over the summer and then the move not happening, I thought he's just destined to play a part in this game, whether he get a goal or wins a penalty or gets an assist. I just had a feeling something was going to happen, but we kept him relatively quiet, which was good. And Fabinho was responsible for a lot of that. But obviously, penalty was given, and Alisson Becker finally decided he was going to save a penalty for us. I think he's faced, 2 penalty shootouts in the Community Shield, and he's had a few penalties here and there. All of them have been scored, apart from the one Riyad Mahrez skied for Man City 18-19 season right at the beginning. But it was a good save. It was hit sort of bloody quite hard and low to the keeper's left, but I think just as he was about to take it, the commentator was saying that Chelsea have scored 16 consecutive penalties up until that point, and Jorginho does his stupid little staggered run up, and again the commentator said it, if as a goalkeeper, if you stand up and wait, you put the doubt in his mind. He normally waits for you to move and then just rolls it the opposite corner, but Alisson just stood there. And then it put the onus on Jorginho, and it was a good save. He got a good strong hand to it, and I did think at first someone's going to get the rebound and smash it in, but we got away with that one. And then Alisson made another good save later on, down to his left, strong left hand to it. I think it was Tammy Abraham, I believe, which was another good save. So it was good. Alisson had pretty much nothing to do all game, but he just looked switched on. There's sometimes, I expected a bit more from him for the goals against Leeds last week, but you can't fault him in that Chelsea game. So clean sheet, save penalty, all good. He's in my dream team as well, so nice points there for me, which is good. So that was the game pretty much done. It's finishing 2-0. I want to know who you guys would all class as your man of the match. I'll tell you who I think first. And I think it's a bit of a travesty as well, because for what other players did in the game, it's sort of a little bit disrespectful for them. Like Sadio Mane, for me, was immense. He got the 2 goals, and I don't think he's in anybody's consideration for man of the match. My man of the match would be Fabinho, because I think consistently throughout that game, he was solid. He was brilliant. Thiago came in and had an immense 45 minutes, but if you're looking at it as a whole, for me, it has to be Fabinho, and I think that's harsh on Sadio Mane because he was involved in all the critical moments. He was involved in the Christensen red card. He scored the 2 goals, and he was constantly in their faces. So Fabinho for me, which I feel is a bit harsh for Sadio Mane. But Leo, I'll start with you. Who would be your man of the match?
I would have given it to Mane. I mean, goals win you games. He scored 2 goals. It's pretty simple for me.
I don't feel too bad now. Lee's giving him a shout. So, James?
Yeah, I'm the same as Lee. Sadio Mane is my man of the match. With Fabinho, he was phenomenal at centre-back. That's for sure. And he's obviously cemented his place as 4th choice centre-back. With obviously, by the sounds of it, we're not bringing in any more centre-backs or any more signings by what James Pearce is reporting. But for me, Sadio Mane does the same thing consistently on a weekly basis. Don't get me wrong, Fabinho stepping in at centre-back done a great job, but Sadio Mane is just absolutely terrorizes people. And I think he's been doing it for so long, yet people still cannot contain him, cannot control him. He just is an absolute thorn in every defensive side, and he proved it yesterday. He caused absolute nightmares for Kepa. He made Reece James look amateur. He's just an all-round phenomenal football player, and the way he spearheads attacks as well, he's just phenomenal. He was deserved man of the match.
Good stuff. Jussi?
I'd go Mane also because he changed the game. Those critical moments you were talking about earlier, he just changed the game. Second half was completely different because of the red card and all of those situations where we could make them vulnerable. He was always there. And obviously, Fabinho played a really good game as a centre half, and I think he could be our first choice now to partner Virgil. But the thing is that obviously we want to see him as a 6 also. So that's the only problem we might have, like with him as a centre half.
Yeah, I think you might see some, depending on who we're playing. If you're going to go up against somebody like Man City, for example, you're going to want Fabinho in that number 6 role. You go up against somebody like Aston Villa, Fulham. Do you really need Fabinho sat there as a number 6? I'm not so sure. But we'll see. I don't know how it's going to pan out. I mean, he played there before as a centre-back for us in other games, but never for a whole game. He's never had to start there. He had to sort of fit back in earlier in this sort of Wolves in the FA Cup. He played there, and he had Hoover next to him. Bayern he did actually, because Van Dijk was suspended. So yeah, he did play that one, but it's been few and far between. But I mean, for me, he was immense, and I could not fault him. He was brilliant. So you guys can have your Sadio Mane. I'm going to stick up for my boy Fabinho. So, but no, I can't fault anyone actually. All of our players, everyone who came on, absolutely brilliant. We mentioned it at the beginning there, the step up from the performance against Leeds. I mean, Leeds was going to be a tricky one. Short pre-season, new team come promoted. We always take a few games to get going, but we got the 3 points last week, whereas this morning or yesterday we got the 3 points, but the performance was there as well. So it's good. We've obviously got Lincoln in the League Cup Wednesday night, and then Arsenal at the weekend. So it's good to see that we've hit form, and I'm hoping that we can get Thiago back out there again for the Arsenal game, because they've got one over us on the last couple of games. So we need to sort that one out. And before we do wrap up, though, obviously we've all spoke about Thiago, but I think we need to mention our other signing, which came out from absolutely nowhere. I think it was a few rumours 24 hours before, and then it was all wrapped up. So Diogo Jota, your thoughts on it, Jussi?
I don't know much about him. Like, I've seen him play obviously a few times, but I'm sure they have an idea why they bought him, but I'm not really so familiar with him, I have to say.
Okay, James.
Yeah, he's an exciting young talent. He's still only 23. I think the challenge that he's had is he's been very inconsistent for Wolves. He's had some absolute blinders. I think there was I read somewhere, I think last season, I think in all competitions he had scored 16 goals, which for a team like Wolves, you think that's a really good number, but those 16 goals only came in 10 games. So you sort of think, well, in a 40-game season, what sort of return are you getting? I think the difference is the right training, being in the right squad, being used in the right way. Like you look at Bobby Firmino, last season I think he scored 11 or 12 goals. I can't quite remember the number, but it's the quality that he does around that for the rest of the team. And I think that's what we need. We can't be so reliant on the same 3 players. And we've also now brought in Minamino, we've got Divock Origi as well, players who add different dimensions. But we really need a player who can be a consistent impact as well. And I think Jota, he's the one that's been earmarked to be that player, to ease the burden on the front 3. Because what you get from Sadio Mane, Mo Salah and Bobby Firmino, that's not what you're going to get from Divock Origi. You're going to get a different player from Divock Origi who can still win you games, and he's proven that time and time again. There's no question about that. But sometimes you need that intensity, and someone like Jota, with the background that he's got coming from Wolves, who play a form of what Liverpool like to do, he's going to come in a bit more prepared, match up with the intensity, and he's going to be able to bring that to the squad and actually give a bit more back, which is what we need.
Yeah, well said. Lee, what are your thoughts on that signing?
Look, I what James is what's going to happen. I think he might get a bit more of the Minamino treatment and sort of not playing many Premier League or Champions League games initially. Play with the FA Cup, League Cup, etc. Just slowly bed him in, get him used to the way we play, get him used to the press, the physicality of the way we play. Of course, we've got Minamino there to fill in the gap up front should we need to rest somebody. But quality player, I think he's a very good player. As Jim said, he is still very. But I think Klopp will have a lot of enjoyment with him, and I think he'll play very well. I think he's a very good signing, really. Bit dear, but hey.
But is he though for a 23-year-old? And I mean, a lot of people are looking at what he's done at Wolves, but just consider what we brought in Sadio Mane, and now the player he is. And then we signed Mohamed Salah for 30 odd million, and everyone was laughing at that. And look at the player he now is. So we aren't signing. Yes, we're signing Diogo Jota, the Wolves player, but he's going to develop into a much more complete player under Klopp's tutelage. So
100%.
It's an interesting one, and it's somebody else who can go in and be that lively player in that front three. They're all, 29 now, I think, 29, 30, the front three. So they're all around the similar age. So I think what the club's going to start doing is gradually bringing in younger players, because we don't want to have to replace all three of these guys at once.
Come back by next year.
Well, yeah, that's happening. That's a given. But no, I think it's a good signing. It was completely left field. I didn't expect it. And I think, look, time will tell, but I think it could turn out to be a great signing, but we'll see. He's not going to have the impact of Thiago straight away, let's be honest.
Yeah, correct.
But I think all in all, it's hopefully going to be a good signing for us. But before we wrap up, lads, I'm going to announce the third winner. So this is another $50 voucher, and the third winner is Grace Slyman, or Grace Sleeman, however you pronounce your name. Apologies if I got that wrong. So again, make contact with the LFC Couch and we will sort out that voucher for you. But lads, anything else you guys wanted to bring up quickly before we wrap up? Because this is going to be a long one.
No, I'll be bringing the midweek Fantasy Premier League podcast.
Yes, you will.
Not as long as this one, but a good 15-20 minutes, I reckon. So look out for that midweek. If I know you guys are in my fantasy league, and so are so many others, including Mr. Average. So keep an eye out for that one. But I'll be bringing that to you next midweek. So
yeah, so that will hopefully be going out Wednesday night, Australian time, and I think Nick is looking at serving up another episode of his Statisfied. We'll see. I think
sponsored by Snickers,
which will be good. And then I think I'm assuming the Adonai will get together. Maybe not both of them, maybe one of them and somebody else, and we'll look forward to the Arsenal game. But we will see. But definitely Statisfied's going to be coming. Lee's going to have his FPL show, and there'll be some more out there. I think Nish has got a few interviews lined up, and I've got a few lined up as well. So we're going to keep putting the content out there, and hope you guys keep listening. So, James, anything you want to add? Jussi?
I think for me, the only thing I want to add is, what does Thiago bring for the rest of the midfield boys? So
sexual
for me,
football.
Well, yeah, naturally, which is exactly what we want. But I think it'll be interesting to see how the other players are elevated and actually step up their game to really match the level, and because it really is. Thiago comes in, and if he plays like that every week, someone's going to be sitting on the bench. Someone's not going to be going in the weekend squad. So what are the boys going to do to step up their game to make sure that they're actually challenging Thiago, say, no, this is my spot. I can do what you're doing. That's what I find is going to be really interesting, because if you bring someone in like that who can really step up the team's game, what more can that do for the rest of the midfield boys?
Good point. And there's another thing. I was thinking about Thiago as well. Teams are going to look at him as our major threat now in the team. They will be stop Thiago and you stop Liverpool playing. Now recently it's been stop Mohamed Salah and you stop Liverpool playing, stop Sadio Mane. So are we now going to see a shift of emphasis from the opposition trying to stop Thiago, which they may be able to restrict him somewhat, but in doing that, they're going to leave their boys at the back more exposed against the likes of Salah, Firmino, Mane. Firmino will just drop deep and pick up them spaces. So I think there are going to be times where you're going to have people just sat on Thiago trying to make his life hell, but in doing that, they're going to just leave loads more space at the back. So it'll be an interesting one. Jussi?
Yeah, I'd like to add that Trent is one of those who people try to stop from playing when playing against Liverpool, and Trent was pretty good yesterday defensively. What I noticed that there were a couple of situations where he tracked back in a situation where I was obviously you know these situations when the TV picture is not where you'd hope it would be, and there's this long ball and you just see it go past Fabinho, who had just stumbled down on the ground for the first and last time, and Trent was there. I was so surprised because I didn't expect. I was certain there's somebody clean through, and I think Trent did quite well.
Yeah, I think actually against Leeds, I think he was quite quiet for him, but and he got a little bit of stick, and he wasn't getting forward as much as he could. But that was because Leeds literally man marked us 1-for-1 on everybody, so they restricted him. So you do see a lot of people that try and cut that out, but adding this extra person in there who's not like the workhorse type of Henderson or James Milner, people are going to try and stop everything Thiago does, which I think, it's going to restrict that, but you're leaving us open for other opportunities. So only time will tell, but I'm excited. And
you can't stop all of them.
No, exactly. So they put everything on one player. It's going to give more opportunities for others. But now all good. So lads, we'll wrap it up now. So thanks for joining me as usual.
Thank you, mate.
Jussi, go and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
And James and Lee, I'm sure you'll be heading off to bed soon.
Yep. Get up early and order the Xbox X.
Yeah, we don't talk about that. Anyway, thanks for joining me, lads, and thank you all for listening.
All good. Thank you.
Cheers for that.
Cheers, guys.